Video gaming has come a long way since the days of classic games such as Pong, Pac-Man, Mario Brothers, and Sonic the Hedgehog. There have been more than 70 game consoles produced since the late 60s and early 70s. They have evolved into high-caliber 3D graphics and interactivity for the everyday home. Gaming console development has been the source of aggressive competition between multinational corporations seeking your entertainment dollars. This has led to the high quality that is seen in today's video game systems. Ralph Baer invented the first video game console known as the Brown Box in 1967. The box was known as the father of video games. Baer developed the console so it could be hooked up to an ordinary TV set. There were 6 games in this console: ping pong, tennis, handball, volleyball, chess games, and a light gun game. The Brown Box was around for 5 years before Magnavox developed a newer game console called the Magnavox Odyssey. The Magnavox Odyssey was launched in 1972 as the official home video game console. Like the Brown Box, the Odyssey was a silent system equipped with a version of Pong. Atari had a Pong machine in 1973 and decided to make a home system 2 years later in 1975. They called it the Atari Sears Telegames Pong system. This game console had much success, as did the machine they modeled it after, called the Atari Pong. Magnavox developed a series of Odysseys throughout 1976 and 1977. During this time, the Odyssey improved only slightly. It was basically the same games with upgrades to its graphics, controllers, and on-screen scoring. Atari changed the gaming industry forever when it decided to make home video game consoles that were capable of holding cartridges that produced games in color. It was called the Atari 2600. With the consoles producing color and different difficulty levels, they were well received. The Atari 2600 ruled the gaming world for a long time after it was introduced. Atari made more games to compete with any cartridge system that was in development, and in 1979, Atari made 12 more games, all of which were successful. The 80s ushered in the golden age of video gaming. Sega was major competition for the 1983's Nintendo Entertainment System and the ColecoVision. Nintendo, ColecoVision, and Sega were color systems that took the world by storm. Even though Coleco and Atari released new consoles in the early 80s, Nintendo and Sega dethroned them both due to the success of Nintendo and Sega gaming systems. Many of the other companies that produced video games crashed in 1984. Sega released the Mega Drive Genesis in 1988. Nintendo countered with the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES, 2 years later. Sega would also release the Master System 2 the very same year as the SNES. Nintendo and Sega would battle for systems all of the 80s. Even though Atari introduced its 7800, which with you could play Atari 2600 games on it, still fell out of the rankings of Nintendo and Sega. In the 90s, game consoles took a shift with the introduction of the CD. Sony would introduce the PlayStation, which was a game changer for the whole world. Even though Sega Saturn was a better upgrade from the Sega CD, Sony developed much better games for its system. Nintendo made a push at Sony by developing the new Nintendo 64. It was still a cartridge-based game. PlayStation became the king of game consoles for years to come. Sega did not have much success, so they would go on to release a new system in 1998 called the Sega Dreamcast. Sega Dreamcast would be a pioneer in the gaming world for its introducing internet support. Its built-in modem for online gameplay took the world by storm. 2 years later, Sony would make another system to compete with the online gaming of Dreamcast called the PlayStation 2. In 2001, Microsoft enters the gaming world with the Xbox, which also featured online gaming known as Xbox Live. 3 years after that, Nintendo introduced the Wii, which brought motionless wireless controllers. In 2005, Sony and Microsoft would develop 2 systems that would control gaming consoles for the next 8 years: the PlayStation 3, PS3, and the Xbox 360. With full 1080p HD graphics for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Wii, they all have remote sensing 3D movements. The Nintendo Wii has Motion Plus, The Xbox has Kinect, and PlayStation has Move. These add-ons enhance the interactive experience for the player. Much more enhanced games have changed things forever. That is, of course, until the release of the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4.